History Secrets.
In recent decades, one of the most strategic regions on the planet has become the stage for growing tensions: the South China Sea. One of the most important maritime routes of global trade passes through it. Ships transport oil, food, technology, and raw materials between Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. Any disruption in this flow would have global consequences. To understand why this region has become so sensitive, it is necessary to look at China's geographic position. Much of China's maritime access is surrounded by a chain of islands that includes Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, and other nations. This geopolitical structure is known as the First Island Chain. In practice, it functions as a strategic bottleneck. If a dominant naval power were to fully control this island chain, it could limit China's access to the open ocean. This would have enormous implications. China's economy depends heavily on international trade. A significant portion of its food is imported. Much of its oil also comes from abroad, and many of these routes pass through an extremely sensitive point: the Strait of Malacca. For this reason, Chinese strategists consider it vital to ensure military and political presence in the South China Sea. It is not just about territorial expansion, but about long-term economic security. At the same time, the balance of power in the region has historically been influenced by another power: the United States. For decades, the American military presence has functioned as a stabilizing factor for some countries in the region, but also as a source of tension for others. Some analysts believe this balance may change in the coming decades. If American influence in the region declines, new strategic dynamics may emerge. Among them, a more active role for Japan. Japan possesses one of the most advanced navies in the world. Historically, it has also had a strong military presence in East and Southeast Asia. During the 20th century, conflicts between Japan and China deeply shaped the region's history. This historical memory still influences the strategic thinking of both countries. Today, one of the most delicate points in the scenario is Taiwan. The island occupies an extremely strategic geographic position. It sits right at the center of the First Island Chain. For China, Taiwan is considered part of its historical territory. For many other countries, the island has an independent political system that must be preserved. This impasse creates one of the greatest geopolitical challenges of the 21st century. Any conflict involving Taiwan could involve multiple powers, and potentially alter the entire balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. Another factor influencing the regional strategic calculation is demography. Several East Asian countries are facing rapid population aging: Japan, South Korea, and even China. Very low fertility rates mean fewer workers in the future, less economic growth, and also less capacity for long-term military mobilization. This demographic reality deeply influences the strategic planning of these nations. For some analysts, this demographic window creates a sense of urgency in certain countries. If a nation believes its relative position may weaken in the coming decades, it may feel pressure to act before that decline occurs. At the same time, different political cultures hold distinct views on global power. The Western strategic tradition often emphasizes direct competition between great powers: rise, decline, replacement of hegemonies. But some currents of Asian political thought emphasize another model: an international system based more on balance and reciprocity, rather than direct domination. Within Chinese cultural tradition, for example, there's the idea of zhongguo, often translated as Middle Kingdom. This expression reflects a historical view in which China perceives itself as a civilizational center, but not necessarily as a globally expansionist empire. Historically, many Chinese dynasties prioritized internal stability and regional trade, rather than permanent territorial expansion. This tradition still influences part of contemporary diplomatic discourse. In recent years, Chinese leaders have promoted concepts such as multilateralism and economic cooperation, global trade initiatives, strategic partnerships, alternative international organizations. But interpreting these initiatives remains a subject of international debate, and some observers see them as an alternative model of world order. Others believe they represent a new form of power projection. The truth likely lies somewhere between these interpretations. Geopolitics is rarely simple. It involves history, culture, economy, and deeply rooted strategic perceptions. What is certain is that the global balance is undergoing transformation. New powers are emerging, old hegemonies face challenges, and strategic regions such as the Indo-Pacific are becoming increasingly central to the future of international politics. Perhaps the coming decades will reveal which model of global order will prevail: competition between great powers, or cooperation among multiple centers of power. Whatever the outcome, what is happening today in the South China Sea may be only the beginning of a much larger transformation. A transformation that could redefine the balance of the world in the 21st century. If we analyze the historical dynamics between China and Japan, we realize that this relationship has always oscillated between economic cooperation and strategic rivalry. These two countries are among the largest economies in the world, but they also carry a history marked by deep conflicts. At the beginning of the 20th century, Japan emerged as a military power in East Asia. Its rapid industrialization enabled the construction of a modern army and a powerful navy. During this period, Japan expanded its influence across several regions of Asia. This expansion eventually led to direct confrontations with China. The memory of these conflicts still exerts strong influence on the region's strategic thinking. Even decades after the end of the Second World War, historical issues continue to shape the foreign policy of both countries. Today, however, the rivalry takes different forms. Instead of direct territorial conquests, the main focus is on economic influence, control of maritime routes, and regional security. The Indo-Pacific has become the center of this dispute. In this scenario, Taiwan occupies a decisive strategic position. The island is located at a key point between Japan and the Asian mainland. To control or influence this region means having privileged access to the main maritime routes of the Western Pacific. For this reason, any change in Taiwan's status could have global repercussions. A conflict involving the island would not affect only China or Japan. It could involve several international powers. Another fundamental element in this strategic calculation is the demographic factor. Japan is facing one of the fastest population aging processes in the world. The birth rate has dropped drastically in recent decades. This means that, in the future, the country may have fewer workers and fewer human resources available to sustain economic growth and military capabilities. A similar situation is occurring in other East Asian economies. South Korea, China, Taiwan, all face challenges related to population decline. This demographic phenomenon could deeply alter the regional balance of power in the coming decades. Countries with aging populations face significant economic and social pressures. Fewer young people, more retirees, greater pressure on healthcare and pension systems. On the other hand, China still holds a significant demographic advantage. Even with declining birth rates, its population base remains much larger than that of several neighboring countries. This gives it greater capacity for long-term adaptation. These demographic differences directly influence strategic thinking. Some analysts believe that countries facing accelerated population decline may feel greater pressure to resolve geopolitical disputes before their capabilities diminish. At the same time, Other perspectives argue that demographic changes may encourage regional cooperation. Aging economies need stability, trade, economic integration. In this context, China has promoted a vision of international order based on multilateral economic cooperation, infrastructure projects, trade partnerships, alternative international organizations. This strategy seeks to expand Chinese influence not only through military means, but also through economic interdependence. When countries depend economically on one another, conflicts become more costly. However, critics argue that interdependence can also be used as an instrument of strategic pressure, control of supply chains, technological dependence, financial influence. The truth is that the international system is entering a phase of transition. The model of global order established after the Second World War is being questioned. New centers of power are emerging. Asia, in particular, has become one of the main focal points of this transformation. Accelerated economic growth, technological competition, demographic changes. All of this is reshaping the global balance. At the same time, the world is more interconnected than ever. International trade, financial flows, digital communication, regional crises can quickly turn into global challenges. Perhaps that is why analysts closely monitor every movement in the Indo-Pacific region. Because there, some of the contours of the next world order may be taking shape. But history teaches something important. Geopolitical transformations rarely follow predictable paths. Alliances shift. New technologies emerge. Leaders make unexpected decisions. The future of the region will depend not only on strategic calculations, but also on political choices, diplomatic capacity, and the willingness for international cooperation. If the countries of the region can balance competition with dialogue, it may be possible to avoid major conflicts. Otherwise, accumulated tensions may lead to moments of rupture. What is at stake is not only regional leadership, but the stability of one of the most important regions for the global economy. Perhaps the coming decades will reveal whether the Indo-Pacific will become a space of growing rivalry, or a laboratory of cooperation among great powers. Because in the end, the fate of this region may influence the fate of the international system itself. Many civilizations flourished before ours. Some dominated vast territories. Others disappeared almost without leaving traces. What remains are clues, scattered through time, silent monuments, fragmented manuscripts, stories passed down through generations. Each discovery brings us a little closer to the truth, but history still holds many secrets. Because some secrets of history are still waiting to be revealed.